wanted to have a rare or a blue steak, that will be cooked at maybe 52 degrees Celsius, between 50 and 60 degrees. So rare steak. So how can this be safe then? If we're doing that, and I just want to explain that for a moment. So if we think of let's just say we're going to have a fillet of beef. So I'm just going to, if you can imagine that this is a fillet of beef. And this is what we call a premium cut. Let's make this bigger. So fillet of beef is a premium or prime cut. And that's because of where it comes from in the cattle beast. And just like with a fillet of lamb as well, it's a prime cut. And so what happens is a fillet, and if you see one, you can look at the supermarket next time you go, and you often see a whole one there, and it might be, 3 kilos. And this prime cut has no sinew. Well, therefore it's because that piece of the animal has not done much exercise, it's stuck in the ribs, it's not the legs, doing all the building all the muscles. And in the French tradition of culinary arts, they have a dish called beef tartare. I'm sure some of you have had it. And beef tartare, believe it or not, is raw beef. So how on earth could you eat raw beef? So I'm going to explain it. So raw beef. So what they do, again in the French tradition, it is prepared à la minute. And what that means is at the minute. It is prepared right now. It's, if you order it, it hasn't been cut up yesterday. They're doing it now. And what they'll do is they'll take a premium cut like the beef, and they will dice it into small pieces. And then they add to that, believe it or not, raw egg yolk. So they have raw egg yolk. They're going to have some gherkins. And gherkins are pickled in vinegar. And vinegar is high acidity. Vinegar is low risk. Anything with high acidity is a low risk food. And then we're going to add some mustard. So this again, low risk. Some salt. Salt, anything with salt, low risk. And maybe some herbs or something. So again, fresh. And then what they're going to do is they're going to mix it around. And this will emulsify it. I should add, they might add a bit of oil too. Again, low risk. But what's happening is in this process of mixing it around, it helps, it's a bit like the sushi, it helps to pickle the meat, and lessen the risk factors. And the combination of everything helps make it digestible for humans. But if you look at the beef tartare, it does look a lot like mince. So it looks like it's minced meat. But minced meat is high risk. Anything that is minced, it's high risk because it's often the trimmings of other cuts. They've trimmed them up, they've, got, a bit here, a bit there. They've been handled a lot by humans. And then, of course, it goes through a machine, a mincing machine. And this, too, is where you find cross-contamination in the mincing machines because they're not cleaned properly. So therefore, anything that is minced is high risk. And of course, it needs to be cooked to 75 degrees for 30 seconds. And that's why it's very risky to eat a rare burger. Because unless you know where the mince, maybe they've done it in the house, they've chopped it all up, but eating rare burgers is risky. So just, you can think about that. And I know it sounds a bit extraordinary that eating this beef tartare is not risky, but it still is risky. But, it's got some things that are mitigating it. So we're also going to talk a little bit about your fridge. So I'm just going to come down a bit further down here, and I want to, for you, we're going to talk about a domestic fridge. And this, you should draw this because it will be helpful for the assessment. So in your domestic fridge, I'll just do a box here. We're used to the fact that the freezer is at home. The freezer is usually, at the bottom. And you all know the temperature now of the freezer. It's between minus 14 to minus 18 degrees Celsius. So that's easy for us to remember. And then if we go to our fridge, so that usually you've got a veggie drawer here. And these days they usually have a lid. So the lid helps to keep the temperature constant. Constantly cool. And with this is at home or in a commercial kitchen, it's in your veggie drawer. You should still keep the fruit and veggies in paper bags and bags, because that will help extend their life. And you do need to be careful about which vegetables you put next to each other. So what happens in a fridge, so with vegetables, is they give off a gas called ethylene. And some vegetables give off the gas, so such as avocados, tomatoes, apricots, bananas. And so you want to keep those vegetables away from leafy greens. So because the leafy greens like lettuce and spinach, they will perish faster if they're near avocados, for instance. And yes, leafy greens, need to stay in packaging. And I just want to make a comment for those of you who are buying fresh herbs. So say you're buying, say, fresh parsley, and it still has the stalk. You should recut the stalks and put in water. So what I would be suggesting is that you get your parsley or your basil or whatever it is that you're getting from the, whether it's the supermarket or whether it's from your supplier, you get it in and then you recut just a little bit. You recut the stalks and you can put it in a jug of water. Because that will cause the parsley or the herbs to be able to suck up the water again. So it will allow them to rehydrate. And then what would be useful to do you can store in the fridge. But what's actually a good thing to do if you're storing in the fridge is that you then cover with a plastic bag or plastic film or a paper bag in the fridge, and that will prevent the tender leaves getting fridge burn, but they will absolutely last far, far longer in your fridge if you do that, or on the bench. But recutting the stems like you do with flowers is a good thing to do. Okay, so then above veggie drawer is where we're going to store the raw meats. And this is going to be on a drip tray, covered. And you can store, you can have chicken, you can even have fish, beef. They just have to be on separate trays. You don't want to have them, you can't have them on the same dish, but you can have them on the same bench, just in separate parts. And they need to be covered. Because the risk here is the raw juices dripping on something else, on another food. And then above the raw things, we can have, it's more flexible, but we can have our eggs. So eggs should be stored in the fridge. Because again, the coolness extends their life. And they only will take, 20 to 30 minutes to come to room temperature. But we can also have, we obviously got jars of things, but we can also be storing bread in the fridge to prevent mold from growing. So bread, particularly in the top half of the North Island, and I'm sure you all know this, you keep bread in the fridge. In Southland and Dunedin, probably the West Coast, you don't need to do that. And then here we can have, jars, cheese, etc. It doesn't matter so much. But what we do want you to do is on the top shelf, this is where you have any cooked food, such as the quiche, cooked chicken. But again, it's on, separate trays and covered, or in a plastic container. So we've got that on the top shelf. We're not going to drip any of our raw meat onto our cooked chicken. So then if we think of it from the commercial situation, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take our raw meat in our commercial fridge, and we're actually going to, because there's no freezer, we're going to put the raw meat on the bottom shelf. So it can't drip anywhere. And then we're going to have here on the second shelf, we might have, containers of soup or lasagna or curry. So some large containers here. Just again, having them low because it helps their, in case they drip. And then usually in a commercial fridge, you might have you won't necessarily have a drawer, but you might just have to create a veggie shelf. And the best way is to use some of those large plastic containers. With lids. Because it will work better. if you have them sealed. So we might have a couple of shelves like this. And then then the rest of these things remain the same. The cooked food, the bread, these we can just have further up in our fridge to stop them getting dripped on or damaged. Okay, so this is, this will be helpful for you in the test. So it will give you some of the answers that you need. Okay, so we're going to go back to the document now. I think you all got that down. Let's wait another minute. But we're going to go, for those of you who've got the hard copy, we're going to go to the section that talks about food storage. So if you want to find that. All right, so I'm just bringing this up here. So even those of you, running a kitchen out of your home, you'll need to sort out your containers to make sure that, there's nothing on the floor. Your storage area, and like if you're using flour, for instance, you can get a big, those big plastic rubbish bins that you can buy at the warehouse and put your whole bag of flour in that, because you need to make sure that, animals and pests are kept away from your food storage. And with, when you're getting incoming goods, you need to make sure that if they're chilled, need to be chilled, that the temperature is correct. And if you are buying food from the supermarket, you might want to have your own poly box with some ice in it in your car, especially in summer, because if you think of the boot of your car can get very hot. It's an oven sometimes in the middle of summer. So you're going to need to manage that. So we've talked about this best before date and this use by date. But if when you're checking incoming goods, you want to make sure that the packages are free from damage, that the frozen food is still frozen, and it should be, minus 18 degrees. If you're getting food that you have bought frozen or ordered frozen, if it is defrosted, you should never refreeze defrosted food. You need to cook it. You can, like say you've got some frozen chicken legs that are defrosted, you can cook it today and then refreeze it, and refreeze cooked food. But you shouldn't be refreezing defrosted food. And with seafood, we say that it should be 1 degree Celsius, so really cold to touch. So you do have to watch if goods are delivered, in the early hours of your morning. Make sure that they are protected from time and temperature abuse, where they're left out, coming to room temperature at 2 a.m. So we talk about FIFO, first in, first out, and I know most of you will know that. It means that you're storing the oldest food which is nearest its expiry date, that you're going to use that first. And that you are just always checking that. And you certainly have to check it with young staff as well. So we're going to go back here to talk about some of these things. So food poisoning, what is it? What happens? It generally occurs when some microorganisms produce toxins. And what happens, we have what's called gastroenteritis, the irritation of your digestive tract, and so that is where you've got a sore stomach, maybe a bit of nausea, sickness, and then if the toxins get into your intestines, this is where you get diarrhea. So sometimes, as some of you will know, you eat something, you suddenly feel bad, feel like being sick, vomit, and then you feel perfectly fine. And so that is your body's fighting those toxins, getting rid of it, which of course is not very comfortable, but your body has done a good job for you. If the toxins cause diarrhea, that's because they've been digested, and so therefore, and that's where you're getting, you're vomiting and having diarrhea at the same time, which is not very nice. But in many cases, as I know a lot of you all know, suddenly it happens and it's gone. And the disease that can be triggered by a few cells or millions of cells. The symptoms can show in hours, or they may take weeks. The duration can last for hours or for months. And it's important to reflect that over thousands of years, this has always been a problem for humans, food poisoning, and in the past, whether it was through milk, the reason we have pasteurized milk is to prevent us getting diseases like E. coli, and if you look back to the time of Charles Dickens, into the 1800s, I should say, when babies would die, when young children would die, they were often, it's because of these, bacteria and toxins in their environment. And, so we are obviously very concerned, and you need to be concerned because, they're always there. And, it's also important for you to understand within all this discussion, there are good things and bad things. And So how the more, like I said earlier, the smelling of the food will help you understand if it's good. But also your knowledge as you develop more understanding of the products that you're using, you'll be able to discern if things are, good and bad. So, for instance, this photograph here, if you look at this, I'm pretty sure everybody here knows we're not eating this. This is a poisonous toadstool. But you might see, but a mushroom, a field mushroom, as long as you know it's a field mushroom, is perfectly fine to eat. But they're caused by the same way. They're caused by these spores in the ground that are fruiting. And there are thousands of species of mold. And some, in the rivers and the plants, in your hair, on your skin. And so again, we need to be able to discern what is risky to us and what is not. So for instance, if we look, this rock here has lichen on it, which is, a type of fungal growth. Are we going to eat it? Probably not. If we ate it, would it make us sick? Probably not. But if you, I'm just going to show you this photo but if we look at this photo here, this is some mold with bacteria that has grown on a pate. And you can see that if you look closely, you can see a whole lot of interesting things going on here. This is obviously going to make us sick. What are we going to get? Not sure, but we're absolutely throwing this out. This is a type of mold that is going to cause a foodborne illness. So this is a bad mold. But if we look here, this is another mold that creates a famous cheese called Roquefort. Some of you might have eaten Roquefort. It's from a blue cheese from France. And this blue mold originally was found in caves, and they introduced it into the ewe's milk. And this is how we eat Roquefort today. So this is a good example of how mold is used. And, when you look, there's also mold spores. So if you have, a bathroom that suddenly, or a kitchen where you suddenly get mold, appearing around the corners, these can be, from mold spores that are just in the atmosphere, and they appear when you've got, warm, humid conditions, and they might disappear in the summer months. So this is also something that you need to be mindful about, especially for, small children and elderly people that, that suddenly develop allergic reactions or breathing problems. Is it because of a damp house, for instance? They're living in a damp environment, which is causing ill health. And yeasts are another good example. Where would we be without bread? So, and if you think of what happens with a sourdough, you're literally, putting flour and water into a bowl and leaving it on your bench, and these wild yeasts are coming from the atmosphere and eating the carbohydrates in the bread, in the flour, and converting through the fermentation, you're getting carbon dioxide giving off, and also alcohol. So making bread is the same as making wine. And that, making wine is also an ancient and historic practice, just using indigenous yeasts that are in the atmosphere or on the skin of the fruit. But we have good yeast, and then we have bad yeast like candida, which can cause infections in humans. So that's a pathogenic yeast. And bacteria is the same. Bacteria are living microorganisms. We can find them everywhere, and most are harmless. This is an image of some carrots that are fermenting in a mixture where the lactobacillus bacteria, the lactic acid, that's that milky color there. So this is again a very old method of preserving, and I'm keeping this in the fridge. It's going to last for months and months. If I kept it at room temperature, it wouldn't last so long. But this is what happens. Again, think of yogurt. Yogurt is just milk that has, the lactic acid has done its thing and converted it into a more acidic product, which has a longer shelf life than milk. So, medicines such as antibiotics, these are also, they're coming how they were originally made and discovered in the 19th century. So what do they need? Bacteria need nutrients, something to feed on, they need warmth, time to grow, moisture, water, humidity, all of those things. And as I mentioned about the bacon, if you remove the water, the moisture from, the product, bacteria will not grow. So if you think of fresh pasta, for instance, that you might make, you're rolling it out and making a tortellini, probably only going to last for, 4 or 5 days. But if, what they realized is by removing the moisture from the pasta, it can last for years. And so that's why we have all this dry pasta, which is a very low-risk food, because the moisture has been removed. And some bacteria can double in numbers every 20 minutes. So this is why we don't want to leave things on our beach in the danger zone. So we're going to have a look at some of these other foodborne illnesses shortly. In some cases, bacteria can grow without air. So this is anaerobic bacteria, can grow even in a sealed jar or if a food has been vacuum packed. So it's not, again, this is all something that you need to be careful about. And of course, there are natural toxins, so these are, can be found in things like wild berries, some flowers. So if you're putting flowers on your plate, to garnish a dish, you must make sure that they are edible ones. You don't want to be using things like daffodils or rhododendrons, which are, toxic to humans. Green potatoes should be thrown out. Undercooked kidney beans can make people sick. Rhubarb leaves are toxic as well. And we find that we have something called a mycotoxin, which is a toxin produced by certain molds, and this can be found on crops of cereals, nuts, fruits, dried fruits, coffee beans, which are grown in warm and humid environments. So this is often, people are spraying for these. There's also something called an aflatoxin, which is a poisonous mycotoxin and produced by certain molds, such as, in soil, decaying vegetation. So I'm not sure, some of you, I'm sure, are gardeners out there, and if you're putting some potting mix or some compost that you've bought at a garden centre, and you read the back label, it will actually say cover your mouth and nose when you're emptying the bag, and it's because that you might breathe in some of these molds or bacteria or what have you that are in the soil, and then that they may grow in your lungs because of the moist and warm conditions. So you can think about that. And then in New Zealand we have marine toxins. So these are about, you get these warnings about, do not harvest mussels or oysters because something has happened, often to do with the flow of the tides. But sometimes, like when we have a heavy weather event, again we've got some people here from the West Coast. You're getting these regular weather events, and I'm pretty sure you're also getting these regular warnings about not to harvest mussels, for instance, after you've had a heavy rainfall. And there is one I saw. For those of you who are interested, you can sign up to these marine biotoxin alerts on the MPI website. And there was one this week for the Bay of Plenty to say not to take mussels and oysters. Because again, cooking them does not make them safe. And then of course we have algae. I'm pretty sure you're not drinking out of this trough. It's a good dose. But most algae is microscopic. You can't see it, and we see it. It's in the oceans, but also in our lakes. And they can produce toxins, which make us feel sick. And then viruses. So some viruses can be transmitted by food, and the norovirus is the most common cause of foodborne infections. Hepatitis A is another virus, and this is often associated with undercooked seafood, but often it is to do with direct contact with vomit or feces from an infected person. And parasites such as Cryptosporidium or Giardia can enter the food chain via a number of sources. Some of you may recall this time last year in Queenstown, they had a Cryptosporidium issue, and somehow the Cryptosporidium had got into their water supply. They couldn't work out why, and all that they could do is say that you needed to boil your drinking water. it lasted because chlorine didn't work, doesn't work. But last year it lasted for nearly 3 months, where they had a boil water notice in parts of Queenstown. So there is a summary here about common causes of foodborne illnesses. So Bacillus cereus, this is associated with rice, spices, and foods containing starch-based products, gravies, casseroles, sauces. So again, this is where the food, you don't know how old the food is, or you've kept the rice in the fridge for a week and then used it. You're not managing your stock control. Campylobacter is associated with undercooked chicken, unpasteurized milk, undercooked liver, untreated drinking water. And Campylobacter is one of the most common forms of food poisoning in New Zealand. We're just going to stick through some of the most important ones for us. Clostridium botulinum, associated with canned or bottled foods that haven't received adequate heat treatment. So this is where they're heating the food in a can to make for a long enough time to make sure any bacteria have been killed by that process. Clostridium perfringens, associated with meat dishes, especially rolled roast, stuffed meats, soups, stews, gravies, rice and pies that have been cooled too slowly, allowing bacteria to grow. And it's this Clostridium perfringens, which is what they say was the issue at Canterbury University for the 100 people who got sick. It's the cooling. The chicken was cooked, but it had been cooled too slowly. If it was raw chicken, it would probably have been Campylobacter. But because it was cooked chicken, it was Clostridium perfringens. And then E. coli is associated with untreated drinking water, unpasteurized milk, contaminated fresh produce. And if I was to go down to my local creek here and drink a glass of water from it, I would probably end up with E. coli. Because, the creeks, everywhere in New Zealand, you're getting feces from animals as well as humans contaminating the drinking water. A giardia is a parasite, again coming usually from water, contaminating, sprayed on fresh produce. Listeria is something that we need to be concerned about. It's a bacteria, and it is associated with ready-to-eat products such as deli meats and salads, cooked poultry products, smoked seafood, soft cheeses, food with a long refrigerated shelf life, and often linked to outbreaks of listeria. And once the food is contaminated, the bacteria will multiply even at 2 to 4 degrees. So chilling won't help the situation. And for pregnant women, they're often given a note from their GP or midwife saying, don't eat this food. And really, it's all these foods that you shouldn't eat when pregnant, because it could result in a spontaneous abortion or stillbirth, which would be absolutely devastating. norovirus is, we've mentioned it already, here's salmonella, another bacteria associated with tahini, raw meats, untreated water, infectious food handling. And I'm not sure whether you've seen tahini, so that's the sesame paste. So there have been a number of recalls in the last 18 months, and recalls often of hummus that had tahini in it. So again, something to watch out for. Scombrotoxin is associated with dark-fleshed fish, such as kahawai, trevally, kingfish, and it is this sort of tingling, burning sensation in the upper body, a rash. It might just not last for very long. Staphylococcus aureus is a bacteria, poor hygiene management of ham, cooked meat, yogurt, chicken salad, pasta dishes, bakery products, especially cream-filled, and cheese, and raw cheeses. So if you think of, custard squares and donuts that have been cooked yesterday or the day before, these are often associated with staphylococcus. So, we've mentioned already about smelling everything. And I just want to reiterate this, that, just because, a fruit is bruised or is growing mold does not mean it is unsafe to eat. So if it's bread, which has got a little bit of mold on it, you can cut off the mold, throw out the moldy part. If it's a strawberry with some mold, just cut off the mold and you can use the rest of it. So it's usually, an indication of deterioration of quality. It's, again, it's not unsafe. And again, as you get more experienced, you will know that. And, here's a charming piece of cheese. I'm not advising you to eat this. So, but, if this cheese just had a little bit of mold on the corner, just cut it off and use the rest. But when it's gone too far, you absolutely need to throw this out. So, again, thinking about what you're cooking, if you're food with high levels of sugar, such as jams or preserves, the sugar and the cooking process will prevent microorganisms from growing. So a jam can last for years, or preserves or chutneys. And the same goes for foods with high levels of salt, that they will prevent the microorganisms from growing. And then we get high acid. This is where food is made more acidic. And we've talked about these already, so sauerkraut, yogurt, kimchi. And then we've also talked about dehydration or drying of food, which, dried pasta, grains, cereal, jerky, dried meats, the water content has been removed, and they will grow fine. They will grow fine. They will taste fine. And then heating and sealing, preserving in, canning in jars or vacuum packing will also extend the life of the food. And sometimes you'll see people add antioxidants to food, and this is, again, with something like apricots, they add ascorbic acid to the apricot, which will get rid of the moisture. So that's why a dried apricot can last for years. And people also use preservatives to extend the life of foods. So high-risk foods can be defined as foods that are perishable and usually have a high in moisture and usually high in protein, such as eggs, custards, meats, milks. So we've talked about chicken and poultry being high risk, processed meats and mince. But in addition, we get things with eggs, so custard, ice cream, milk, dairy products, fresh cheeses are high risk, stocks and sauces, cooked rice and cereals, and fish and shellfish. So again, we've talked about processed meats. So don't forget that sausages are a processed meat. So you need to make sure that they are cooked inside. Kebabs, something done on a skewer or a doner kebab to make sure that it has been heated sufficiently. We generally say buy it today, cook it tonight. And to buy in small quantities. Look at the eyes, look at the skin, check it doesn't have a strong smell. And we've talked about chilling fish, keeping it at 1 degree Celsius, and then acidified rice. So this is the, how sushi rice is made. And don't forget that New Zealand beef and lamb are 2 of the safest meats in New Zealand. And, and yes, they can be eaten rare and raw, at less than 60 degrees, but not the mince. So this next section looks at food packaging, and I don't think any of you are looking at creating a product, because you're basically working with unpackaged foods, so you do not require a label. But if you were wanting to make a chili sauce, for instance, or something that you could sell with a long shelf life, there's lots of things you would need to do. And there's a whole lot of information here that you can look at on the Ministry of Primary Industries. And I mentioned earlier that you should be looking at these nutritional information panels on all the food that you're buying for where you're working, but also where you're buying for. Can you hear me? I'm just checking. I'm just thinking this. Okay, everybody hear me? Okay, that's good. I just see that I'm just going to put this back on. Sorry, okay, it's good. All right, we have these moments. So these nutrition, but my video is not working. But anyway, sorry about that. I don't know what's happened. It's gone off. So these nutrition information panels are. They often have something called E numbers on them, And E numbers are these codes that stand for substances such as food additives that are used within a product. And often it's to extend the life of a product. I've got an example here which you don't have in your book, but this is for some stir-fry noodles. But what you can see, so the nutrition information, it tells you about the package.
Hello, Celia. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? So my name is Oliver. Sorry, we just had some technical issues happening. What I'm going to talk about is the assessment, which will have been shared with you. So hopefully you can all see my screen as well. So this is what the assessment will look like. It will have Unit Standard 20666, and it will have your name up here. So how we'd like you to fill this out is to type your name into the green box. So I can do this like so. And that's all you must do on page 1. All of these options are actually for us to complete once we've marked your assessment and when we send the results to NZQA. Cool. As we scroll through, on page 2 are the assessment instructions. So I'd recommend having a read through of these in your own time. As we scroll further, these are the first questions. So how we'd like you to answer is to type inside the green box for each question. So you can say, the sky is blue. You can add lines, more lines. You can go back and change your words. All that we ask is all your text is contained within the green box. You'll also notice that every change will come up as a color. So it might be green or pink, and it will create this box out the side. So that is intentional because it makes it easier for us to mark your assessment. If you write the correct answer, we can accept your suggestion and it will change to a black font. If you type the wrong answer, we can reject it and we can put in a comment that will be emailed to you to ask you to have another go. So the other thing to note is you can type here, but we don't want you to answer the question here. We've found that this can sometimes get lost, and it's important that you put your question here or your answer here. Put your answer here. Very good. As we scroll through, I believe there's just over 37 questions, so it will take a little bit of time. On the final page is this declaration that we need you to review and then sign if you're happy. So what this is for you to formally declare that you're not copying any part of the answers from other students in the class, that you're not using artificial intelligence tools, and that you're not Googling the answers and things like that. Sorry everyone, I just dropped off. I'm going to share that again. Must be something happening with our Wi-Fi. And so what I was saying is, we want you to understand this declaration. And when you get here, you can sign this by typing your name here. For the signature, you're welcome to insert your electronic signature. Otherwise, if you have trouble doing that, it's okay to type your name again. And then the final thing is 21st of November 2024 for the date. Cool. So once you have completely finished your assessment and you're ready for it to be marked, we'd like you to submit by clicking this link. You'll have to click twice, once and then again on here. And this will open up a new page to our website, which should have your name here, and there'll be the submission button, which you can press and click Submit Assessment. And so once this is turned green, you should also get a confirmation email within about 30 seconds. When you've got both those things, you're good to close this tab, and you can actually close the entire assessment as well. Very good. If any of you have trouble using that link, you can submit by simply sending us an email. So that's the address on our website. However, this is slower. So when you use the link, you'll be added to the queue faster. So the link to the assessment was sent at about 12 p.m. today. And as you can appreciate, we do have many people on the call, so sometimes they'll go into the junk or the spam or the promotions. So please have a look in there. But ultimately, if you can't find it, please get in contact with us and we'll sort that out for you. The document will save automatically. So to give you an example of this, if I type some text, along the top it says saving, and now saved to drive. That's how you'll know that the automatic saving is working. That means that you can actually do some of the assessment today. You can close the tab and you can actually reopen it tomorrow or over the weekend and continue where you've left off. So you don't need to answer all of the questions in one sitting. You can do some today, some tomorrow until you've finished. For the deadline, the final deadline is going to be Monday next week at 10 a.m. And if this is going to be a problem, please get in contact with us and we can work with that. And if you need to resubmit, the deadline for your resubmission will be Friday, 29th of November. So that's Friday next week. As Celia will have mentioned, you need to get 100% to pass, but this is an open book assessment. So we're confident that in a maximum of 2 resubmissions, that each of you will be able to pass the course. And finally, this is a reminder to everyone about your photo ID and NZQA information. So thank you to everyone who've already sent that through. If we have your photo ID processed, we will issue your certificate within 24 hours of passing the course. However, if we have not got this, we will hold back your certificate until you send that through to us. All good. So that's everything from me. What I'll do is I'll see if Celia is available again. And I'll stop presenting my screen. So I think Celia's still having some technical issues. So what we can do is if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to start off with those now. and I will answer those. And I've also released your microphone, so you'll be welcome to unmute if you'd like to, and then you can ask any questions about the program. Okay, well, I think that that's everything. I know that Celia, oh, she is coming back online, but I can't see. Sorry about the disruption with the sound. Oh yes, Lucky, you can just unmute, or you can type your question in here. I think I have released the mute, so that should be fine. Also, I've got... Yep. Okay, so while we're just waiting for any questions, Celia has asked me to just share this current part, which is relating to food allergens. So this is where we want you to be aware that these are the allergens that you need to know about. And if you are making your own food, you'll need to train your staff about which food contains any of these things. So there is more information about this on the MPI website, so you'll be welcome to click through on that. And many of these are well known, for example, wheat and gluten for people with celiac and things like that. But, you know, some of the other ones have been split out and are now more specific. So it's not just nuts. You'll need to look at pine nuts versus pistachios and things like that. So there are some more resources for that. And the key thing to know is that you have to be able to accurately tell your customer what is in their food so that they can actually be safe and make informed choices. And I remember reading a article earlier in the year about a tourist family who died in Rome, you know, where they consumed some form of nut that they weren't made aware of, you know, and so it can be quite a serious consequence for people. So you do need to be taking this quite seriously. And certainly for the early childhood education people, there will be procedures that you already have in place to manage all the various allergies of different people. So, just another thing with gluten-free, if you're rolling out pastry, you're spraying flour literally everywhere. So you might need to prepare gluten-free stuff first in the morning, as an example, and then have a really good clean, and then move on to your glutinous stuff. Some places will have separate areas for dealing with gluten-free. It depends how much volume you're doing. And so, just a quick reminder with vegan, so this includes anything with our animal origin, and so that includes butter, cheese, eggs. And we always like to note about wine. So often wineries are using egg whites to help clarify or make clear and remove sediment. That's the traditional way, is they put egg whites into the barrels or the fermentation, and it would absorb some of the sediment at the bottom. But that means that some of the wine is no longer vegan. There's also some rules regarding food names. So if you are selling sausages, for example, there is actually a rule that says it must contain no less than 500 grams per kilo of fat-free meat to be called a sausage. That means that 50%, so there's still a lot of room for fat and other things in there. But if the sausage is sold as a snarler or a sizzler, that means it has even less. So that's something to watch out for as well. I know that Celia has talked through the temperatures, so these will be important. There will be exam questions on that. Here's the temperature for the freezer again, minus 14 to minus 18. That will be in the assessment. You're not required to record the freezer temperature, but you do need to be aware that your freezer is working, Now, the final thing we're going to jump to is the personal hygiene. Have you done this? Yeah. So the last section we need to finish, why don't you wait, Celia, is the cleaning and sanitizing. So when we are finishing up to the end of the day and wanting to clean the bench, the first step will be to do a clean, usually with some form of detergent or dish soap. And this removes visible dirt and grease, so think of fat, but it doesn't necessarily kill the microorganisms. So after you've done your cleaning, you'll need to do a drying. We often use a cloth that's a paper towel or a tea towel that you then wash. Then you will spray a sanitizer afterwards, and that is a different product. It does not help with removing the fat, so you don't want to use the sanitizer to get rid of butter, but the sanitizer is the second step, and that is killing the microorganisms. You'll need to look at the instructions because often they come concentrated and you'll need to dilute yourself, and you just need to make sure that you're spraying it on in a concentration that's going to be effective. Many of the sanitizers have an alcohol based component similar to hand sanitizer. Once this is done, you can let it air dry, and generally we're only sanitizing at the end of the service. So you don't need to sanitize, every 10 minutes, for example, but, at the end of a service is a good step. So sterilizing is an extreme form of sanitizing, and this is where it uses heat. So if you think you go to the dentist, they will sterilize your all of the implements by putting them in something called an autoclave that heats them to a certain temperature for a certain period of time. And so we do need to differentiate, because the commercial dishwasher is at 83 degrees. The word sterilizer is often used for that, but it's not as good as the dentist sterilization. So there are different levels of that. And in the hospitality world, we are not sterilizing to 121. That's only for medical, medical procedures. One thing to note with your commercial dishwasher is there is a temperature. It needs to be 83, but you'll be aware that the cycle is only 2 to 3 minutes. So you do need to wash the dishes first before you put them in, particularly to remove any grease and oil, because the dishwasher is running for a short cycle, so it's not going to fully cover that. By contrast, your domestic dishwasher is usually doing a much better job, but that has different types of detergent, which include items to remove the fat, and it has a much longer cycle, so it's doing a much longer job. But we don't have time to wait 100 minutes in the restaurant to wait for this type of dishwasher. So here is a summary of the cleaning process. So you will need to refer to this for some of the questions in the assessment. And it's reiterating: wipe the bench, clean with detergent to remove the grease, dry, and then spray with the sanitizer to fully, sanitize and clean. Deep cleaning, we heard this during the COVID times, and this is referring to a very good clean. When they were talking about in COVID, they would deep clean the supermarket. They weren't actually taking anything off the shelves. They would just use this bacterial spray and go and, like fly spray, like bomb the entire supermarket with this antibacterial aerosol, and that was how they were sanitizing everything on the shelves. But in a hospitality setting, we think about deep cleaning as, taking the vents out of the extraction fan and giving them a good wash, taking out the all the containers from your shelving and giving that a good wash. And you will need to include those things on your cleaning schedule for your food control plan. And you should be including things like the thing you press on the door to push open the door, lift buttons, light switches, things like that. Another note is with nail brushes, which are very useful. Please remember to wash them on a cycle sometimes. We will boil them, which will get them above that temperature so everything dies. But you can also put them through your dishwasher a couple of times too. So pests and animals are very annoying in the commercial situation because they can cross-contaminate. So you think of your cat, it jumps up on the bench and walks across. Where have its feet been? All through the garden, and it's putting all this bacteria across your bench. Same things for birds, and certainly mice and, rats are, cross-contaminating your benches as well. So if you notice pets and animals, you must about it. You'll need to find where they're coming from, repair any holes if that's how they're getting in. And if it's bad, you may need to hire an exterminator. And certainly for bigger businesses such as rest homes, if they have rats in the kitchen, it actually becomes a process where they need to take things out of the kitchen. So, keep this in mind to be watching. For ants, following the trail and working out where they're coming from and putting some blue tack or some tin foil or something in the hole. So for cockroaches, we have found that there is never only one cockroach. They always are more than one. And so if you find one, you need to go looking and see where else they are, because they might be in the places that are warmer, such as in the back of the fridge where it's letting out the heat, under the coffee machine, things like that. And when you find pests, it triggers the whole cleaning schedule. So you need to clean with detergent, do the drying, and then sanitize as well. With the rubbish, you'll need to make sure that you're cleaning your rubbish bins regularly, because this attracts cockroaches and things like that. So to prevent rats getting into your bins, make sure that you're getting them picked up very often and cleaning them as necessary. We're just doing a showcase for the recycling, so at least in Auckland, what they accept in the recycling bin has changed. So all of this polystyrene and many of the trays that the meat comes on, they no longer want in the recycling. This is not in the assessment, but it's useful for you guys to have a look. So this is the end of the program. Here's a quick summary about what you all will do, which is practice good personal hygiene, keeping your hair and your nails and yourself and your clothes clean, keeping the kitchen clean, that you're going to cook the food properly, and that you're going to cover and chill and store the food safely with dates and keeping it in the fridge such that the fresh fish does not drip onto your delicious chocolate cake and contaminate, and to train your staff. On this final page is a very useful poster, and you can get this from the MPI website, and you can put it up in your kitchen, and it will include many of the things that we've talked about. So here's a summary of some important allergens. You'll recognize this temperature thermometer, and you'll recognize some of these steps about hand hygiene. Okay, so that is the end of the program. Well done, everyone, for getting through. I know that it's a lot of information, and I do apologize for the technical challenge that Celia has had, but I hope that we've managed to sort that out for you all. And now I'd welcome everyone to open their microphones if they want to ask any questions, but ultimately you're now free to go and enjoy lunch. And I'm happy to stay on for as long as we need if you have any questions, but thank you very much for your attention, and well done, and we look forward to marking all of your assessments over the next few days. So, all good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. It's good that the microphone is working for you guys.